A new epidemic is rapidly spreading throughout New York City, but it is not a virus. It's an epidemic of refugees, businesses or corporations by the thousands leaving behind a city that's bankrupt and broke and now wants to pillage successful industries. But as it turns out, New York City's new mayor is only pouring gasoline on a raging fire, and it's his own insane promises that are going up in smoke. Stick them to the very end of this video because we're about to see the latest multi-billion-dollar corporation leaving the city and why the political future for progressive socialists like Mamdani has ended before it even began. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, here to help you make sense of the madness with breaking news and analysis you're not going to get anywhere else. So you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Let me start by painting the picture for you here because the numbers are genuinely staggering. Zoran Mamdani is watching his city literally hemorrhage businesses. And the latest in the refugee camp is Goldman Sachs. Now, if you don't know, Goldman Sachs has launched an internal initiative called Project Voyage or Project Voyage. I don't know which one I like better, but it's an internal program ordering. And that's the key. It's requiring, it is mandating managers, vice presidents, managing directors, and in some cases partners to get out of New York City, to leave Manhattan altogether and relocate to either Dallas, Texas, or Salt Lake City, Utah, with a very clear message attached to the relocation order. Move or find another job. Okay, this is mandated. The new multi-million-dollar Goldman campus going up on Northfield Street in Dallas, it's not a satellite office. It's a two-building, 800,000 square foot, 5,000 employee campus scheduled for completion in 2027. Dallas gave them $18 million in city incentives to make it happen. Texas gave them zero state income tax. All the while, New York, under Mamdani, is preparing to raise the top corporate rate from 7% to 11.5% and the personal income tax rate for top earners by another 2%. Meanwhile, JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon went public in his April shareholder letter with the very same dynamic as Goldman Sachs. JP Morgan's New York City headcount has dropped from 30,000 to 24,000 over the last several years. All the while, their Texas workforce has surged from 26,000 to 32,000. And the head of the partnership for the city of New York has confirmed that Apollo Global Management, a $900 billion asset manager, is actively plotting a second U.S. headquarters in the Sun Belt, while several other major New York City firms that have been headquartered there for like 100 years are, in his words, down the road of leaving. Now, get this. This is going to blow you away. You ready for this? According to a report from the Economic Development Corporation, New York City lost nearly 5,000 businesses just the last year alone. 5,000 businesses have packed up and moved out of the city in the last year alone. In terms of large corporations, between 2020 and 2024, 892 have left New York State, taking an estimated $47 billion in income with them. Florida alone picked up 341 of those companies. Texas added 187. This is a massive economic realignment that's happening. And New York, for the fifth consecutive year, you want to talk realignment, for the fifth consecutive year, New York ranks dead last, 50th out of 50 states in the Tax Foundation's State Tax Competitiveness Index. Dead last. And that's even before Mamdani's insane tax increases pass. The city's broke. He's had to admit that. He's slowly but surely admitting that he's not even going to come close to fulfilling a tenth of his promises. Less than 1% of New York City's tax filers pay roughly 37% of the city's entire income tax revenue. I mean, let that hit. Less than 1% are funding more than a third of the ledger. I mean, that's a disaster in the making right there. And then, of course, Mamdani inherited a $5.4 billion budget gap that sources actually at City Council say is closer to $6 billion. And the Citizens Budget Commission projects it could hit $10 billion within the next 2 years. So a city is broke, and his attempt at, quote, fixing that brokenness by taxing corporations and the wealthy is backfiring big time with this massive corporate exodus out of New York. Mamdani's inaugural budget was built on a projection of 15.1% Wall Street bonus growth for fiscal year 2025. The financial sector accounts for roughly 20% of all New York State tax revenue. I don't know if you know that. It's the single most concentrated dependency of any major city's budget on any single industry in the entire country. Okay, 20% of their tax revenue comes from this industry, and the financial industry. And what happened is that the bonus growth came in far below projections, and that created a budget hole before a single new tax passed, before a single new regulation has been imposed, before Goldman Sachs' Project Voyage has even completed its first phase. So Mamdani's response to this emerging fiscal gap, it was actually to double down on the tax increases, raise the corporate rate even further, raise the personal income tax on the very people, the high earners, the financial professionals, the managing directors being asked by Goldman to move to Dallas, whose departure is the cause of the shortfall he's trying to fill. Yeah, let's tax them more. And the Dallas mayor, who, by the way, is a Republican, Eric Johnson, he switched in office from Democrat to Republican. He's a good guy. He's sitting in Texas watching all this unfold. He's like, he couldn't be happier. It's just, I mean, it's like Christmas every day. He's seeing a flood of Wall Street firms moving from Manhattan to Dallas. And this is after 7 consecutive years of Texas cutting property taxes. This is what competition between states looks like in a federal republic. This is exactly what the founders designed. And we're about to find out why this competition is indeed the death knell for Mamdani and all the insane socialists trying to emulate him. Where do you see this? But first, gang, when the left talks about affordability, they never once mention how catastrophically costly the Biden era's regulatory avalanche was for ordinary American families. Because under Biden, between 400 and 800 new rules were forced onto hardworking Americans every single year, placing a $1.8 trillion burden on the backs of the people who build and sustain this economy. Now, thankfully, President Trump is changing all of that in a dramatic and historic way, slashing and cutting rules and regulations at an unprecedented rate. Earlier this month, in fact, the SEC officially eliminated something called the pattern day trader rule. So that's an old rule that forced ordinary people to have to keep up to $25,000 sitting in their account just for the privilege of day trading. And while liberals argue, well, this rule's there to protect less educated Americans, what it really did was protect the status quo by keeping the little guy out of the game entirely, but not anymore. By removing that arbitrary threshold, the Trump administration has effectively democratized the stock market for every American who ever wanted a seat at the table, which is exactly why I am so excited to tell you about my good friend Mark Wilburn of Neos Capital. He'll be hosting another free online training called the Freedom Trading Summit on June 25th and June 27th. Mark has been trading for nearly 20 years. His stock picks and training have helped listeners not only beat the market, but in some cases 2x or even 3x market returns. And the last time he hosted one of these events, we received so much incredible feedback that we asked him to do it again. Feedback from listeners like Bert, who after attending one of Mark's events went on to make nearly $25,000 on a $70,000 account in just 6 weeks and sent over his statements to prove it, showing exactly the kind of opportunities that exist right now in this new era we're living in. So if you're wondering how to position yourself to prosper in these times. Go to freeturleyticket.com right now to reserve your spot with 2 live events to choose from. Thursday, June 25th, and Saturday morning, June 27th. Go to freeturleyticket.com and reserve your spot. You're going to absolutely love it. What Mamdani and others like him represent is the rise of what's increasingly called municipal socialism. The Municipal Socialist Coalition is a coalition of cosmopolitan professionals and university-educated urbanites who have in many ways never run a business, never met a payroll, never had to calculate what happens to your workforce when the cost of operating is in a given jurisdiction, say, like rises by over 40% overnight. They live in cities. They work in cities. And crucially, they think that everyone who matters also lives and works in cities. And therefore, what happens in the city stays in the city, meaning that the capital, the talent, the enterprise, they're all fixed and immovable as like the buildings themselves. This is the foundational intellectual error of municipal socialism. And it's an error with catastrophic consequences every single time it's tried. So as I'm sure you've guessed, given the trend of businesses leaving New York, the principle that interrupts and destroys the utopian plans of every urban socialist mayor is the simple principle: businesses are transportable. Okay? Businesses are capital is transportable. Talent is transportable. In a federal republic with 50 sovereign states, each competing for investment, each setting its own tax rates, each making its own regulatory decisions, the geography of economic activity is not fixed, it's fluid. It responds to incentives and disincentives exactly the way water responds to gravity. It flows to the lowest point of resistance, and it does so slowly at first and then all at once. The municipal socialist makes a very specific and very fatal assumption. They assume that the city's existing economic base is a captive resource. They assume that the financial sector is in New York City because it has to be in New York, because of the talent pool, because of the network effects, because of the destiny of relationships, because of Wall Street's 100-year institutional history. But what Goldman Sachs' Project Voyage tells you, what J.P. Morgan's 10-year headcount migration tells you, is that the talent pool they rely on is more than willing to leave the high confiscatory taxation of New York for the economically free and vibrant states of Texas and Florida. And here's the key. Once a business of that size, like JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs, once that business makes the decision to begin migrating its operational infrastructure to a lower cost environment, that decision does not reverse. The campus in Dallas only continues to grow while the campus in New York City continues to fade. That's exactly what happened recently with ExxonMobil in New Jersey, which is suffering as well from these insane socialist policies. ExxonMobil has been in New Jersey, if you can believe it, for 144 years, since J.D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil days. But of late, they slowly but surely began moving their operations more and more to Texas. I believe it's Houston, I believe. And then it was just recently revealed that they hadn't had a board meeting in New Jersey for over 40 years. All their board meetings have been in Texas. And now they're leaving Jersey altogether. So that's the pattern. And that's the pattern that's destroying municipal socialism before it ever really begins. Every city that's tried municipal socialism has learned this lesson eventually. Chicago is learning it. Seattle is learning it. And New York under Mamdani is about to learn it at enormous cost to the very working families he promised to protect, most of whom, by the way, didn't even vote for him. They voted more for Cuomo or Squila, because you can't tax your way to prosperity. They know that. You can't regulate your way to abundance, and you absolutely, categorically, definitively cannot build a socialist city in a capitalist republic where the capital has a moving truck and a GPS signal pointed straight at Dallas.